Well, if you're an Auburn fan and you expect anybody to take these national titles that you've suddenly claimed serious, I've got 4 words for you. So Auburn has jumped in their time machine, turned back the clock, and suddenly found a bunch of national titles that they say they didn't know existed. Good morning, it's Uncle Lou here. That's right, it is me, Uncle Lou, live on LouTube for you. Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed. We're 5 days away from the start of the season. I cannot wait. Week 0 coming up on Saturday. Hit the thumbs up. Yes, Auburn has announced that they are going back in time and claiming a bunch of national titles that they previously did not claim. Now, Auburn's not the first team to do this. In fact, I'll go ahead and raise my hand as a Georgia fan. Georgia fans, Georgia did this. Back in the late 80s, was it 88 or 89? Vince Dooley had stepped down as head coach and become athletic director and said, hey, guess what? I just found some random publication somewhere in 1942 that said Georgia was the national champion. So we're going to go back in time now 45, 46 years later and claim 1942 as a national championship. So Georgia has done this too. The one time Georgia claims 4 national titles now, 1942, 1980, 2021, and 2022. No one disputes the last 3. The first one we'll talk about more in a second, obviously, is disputed. So this isn't something new. This obviously isn't something only Auburn has done. And, of course, the most famous example of this is Alabama. Alabama claims more fake national titles than most teams have real national titles. They claim 6, 7, 8 fake national titles, whatever it is. And Alabama claimed their fake national titles for the same reason that Georgia claimed theirs in the late 80s, and the same reason that Auburn is claiming all of these now. One surefire sign, one can't miss sort of dead giveaway that a program is down bad is if they go back in time and start claiming national titles. Nobody has ever done this when they're on top of the college football world or even a relevant football program, to be honest. You start with Georgia in the late 80s. Georgia was terrible in the 80s. There wasn't a whole lot going on in Athens football-wise in the late 80s if you weren't around back then. It was a disastrous time with Ray Goff as head coach. It was terrible. It just did not work out well. And so, hey, don't worry, we're losing a bunch of games. But guess what? We found a national title from 45 years ago that we're going to claim now. Alabama, when they went back in time and claimed all their fake natties, what was going on in the world of college football then? Well, I'm glad you asked. I'll let you know. So Georgia won the SEC in 1980, 1981, and 1982, 3 years in a row. Less than 2 months after Georgia won the SEC title in 1982, Bear Bryant died. That's right, Bear Bryant, no longer able to win the SEC because Georgia was the new king of the block, keeled over and died. Georgia killed Bear Bryant by winning 3 straight SEC titles in 1980, 1981, and 1982. 2 months later, in January of 1983, Bear Bryant died. Fast forward to the fall of 1983, the following football season, Alabama fans show up at the first home game. They're handing out the programs. Program, get your program. You buy your program for $1. You're an Alabama fan. You open up the program there in the fall of 1983, and holy moly, somehow Alabama has 6 or 7 more national titles that they didn't have the year before. Turns out, in the offseason, in an attempt to make themselves feel better about Bear Bryant being dead, they went back in time and fake claimed a bunch of national titles that didn't exist and published them in their program in the fall of 1983. And from that point forward is when they started claiming this ridiculous amount of national titles. That's what happened. They were down bad. They were terrible. They couldn't win the SEC. Their hero had just died. And to make themselves feel better, they went back in time and claimed a bunch of natties that didn't exist. Georgia in the late 1980s won a title in 1980, won the SEC in 81 and 82, but it had fallen off by the late 80s after Vince Dooley retired. They were down in the dumps. They go back in time. They claim a fake natty. Auburn now. When was the last time Auburn even had a winning record? COVID? They're absolutely terrible. Brian Harsin was one of the worst hires in the history of the SEC. They followed it up with Hugh Freeze, guy that's supposed to be a quarterback whisperer, had some success in the SEC before it Ole Miss, gets to Auburn, and what does he do? Ruin every quarterback he touches and put out one of the worst offenses on the planet 3 years straight. Can't get a winning record or make a bowl game. To fix the problem, what does he do? He goes into the transfer portal and he brings in the worst quarterback in the SEC from last year at Oklahoma, Jackson Arnold. The guy is circling the drain. Hugh Freeze. Auburn fans have absolutely nothing to look forward to in 2025. Nothing. Best case scenario for Auburn is beating one of their rivals in a game that in the end won't mean anything at all. Georgia and Alabama are both headed to the playoffs yet again, while Auburn will be sitting around wondering how to get bowl eligible. So they go back in time and they claim some fake Nattys. How many did they claim? 4 or 5 fake Nattys, from some from 20, 30 years ago, some from 60, 70 years ago. It's just ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Now, there's a big difference in Bama doing this in the early 80s, Georgia doing it in the late 80s. And by the way, a ton of other teams have done it too. I'm not going to run through the list. But there's a big difference between when it used to happen back then and it happening now. And the main difference is the fact that people know, like, this is easily knowable information now. In the early 80s and in the late 80s, when Alabama and Georgia respectively went back in time and claimed those national titles, there was no talk radio shows like we know them today to sit around and make fun of it and talk about it. There definitely was no Facebook or Twitter or anything, no internet like that, where the word spread and people went like, what the hell is going on? In fact, no one talked about it at all when it happened back in the early 80s to Bama and late 80s to Georgia. There was no forum for people to talk about it like there is now. There was no podcast, there was no YouTube, no internet, no Twitter, no Facebook, no national satellite radio would call in show. There was none of that. Like I said, the way people found out that Alabama went back in time and claimed a bunch of Nattys was by literally buying the football program at a football game in the fall of 1983 and going, where'd all these Nattys come from? They weren't in the program the year before. Now they're in the program a year later. You go back in time and claim. Now, something like this happens, everybody on the planet immediately knows about it, and everybody's ever to talk about it and point and laugh. It's a joke. Now, is what Auburn doing a bigger joke than what Bama did or what Georgia did or what anybody else has done, turning back the clock 40, 50, 60 years to claim fake national titles to make yourself feel better when your football team is in the absolute dumps? No. It's bad for anybody to do it. What makes it seem worse now with Auburn doing it is the fact that we're able to talk about it and know about it in real time and point and laugh at it in real time. And in that respect, I kind of feel bad for Auburn fans because they're having to live through this in real time. Now, we've all gone back and we all make fun of Alabama fans now for claiming fake national titles, and there's been people make fun of me for Georgia claiming the one fake national title. And to be fair, not all fake national titles are created equally. We're going to talk about some of that in a second. But this is clearly ridiculous. Again, Ohio State won the national championship last year, right? I guarantee you Ohio State's got no interest right now sitting around trying to figure out how they can claim a fake national title from 60 years ago whenever they just actually won a real one. This only happens when teams are absolute dog shit, and that's the case for Auburn right now. They're fucking terrible. They have been since COVID, and there's no sign of things getting better. They're the biggest little brother program in all of college football because they've got two fathers. They're two rivals. The Iron Bowl is a huge rivalry, but so is the Georgia-Auburn game. The Georgia-Auburn game has been played more and over a longer period of time than the Auburn-Alabama game has. Georgia-Auburn is the South's oldest rivalry when it comes to college football. And Auburn needs a telescope and a GPS to look far enough into the future to see Georgia, to see where Georgia and Alabama are compared to them. They are so far ahead of Auburn, both of those programs are, that it's not even funny. Auburn finds itself in a situation where they are never going to be what their two rivals are. They're just never going to be that. Georgia and Alabama are two of the best 5 programs in all of college football. Where there'll be an odd year here or there where Auburn beats an Alabama or beats a Georgia, yeah, Georgia and Bama aren't going to beat Auburn every single year from now to the end of time. But there will never be a day where human beings are breathing air on this planet where Auburn has become a better football program than either Georgia or Alabama. It just will never happen. They are the biggest little brother program in all of college football. And this is an attempt in a period of time where they're down in the dumps to sort of make themselves feel better emotionally by going back in time and claiming a bunch of fake national titles. Now I want to talk about some of these natties that have been claimed. Not all fake national titles are created equally. Let's start with Georgia's, for example, in 1942. Now, a lot of you know this, but the AP national champion, which is what a lot of people consider sort of the start of the modern era of college football, started way back in, what was it, the 30s? I've got it pulled up here somewhere. 1936. 1936 was the first time the AP poll started ranking and tracking teams and putting out a final AP poll at the end of the season. Minnesota was the first AP national champion, in case you're wondering. So let's go with Georgia's fake national title in 1942. In the final AP poll, Ohio State was ranked number 1. So they're the AP national champion for 1942. Georgia was ranked number 2. They each had one loss. Georgia was 10-1. Ohio State was 9-1. Ohio State lost to a ranked Wisconsin. Georgia lost to a ranked Auburn. Now, you have to remember, back in those days, all you had was bowl games at the end of the season, and they didn't care what teams were ranked when it came to matching up these games. It was all about conference affiliation. So, in other words, Ohio State would have played a Pac-10 or whatever team in the Rose Bowl, and Georgia would have played somebody in the Sugar Bowl. They had no interest in matching up 1 and 2. So, you had a lot of years where teams finished the regular season with the same record, and whoever was ranked higher in the AP poll at the end of the season that was sort of named the AP national champion. But you also had a whole list of other people that would put out rankings too. More recently, you had the coach. You still have the coaches poll. You used to have something called the UPI poll. All kinds of magazines and publications and newspapers would put out final rankings, and teams started claiming a national title if they were ranked number 1 at the end of the season in any of those things. Alabama, on the other hand, claims a bunch of national titles where they finished 3rd in the SEC. Georgia and Ohio State in 1942 each won their conference. Ohio State won the Big Ten. Georgia won the SEC. They each had one loss. Georgia had one additional win than Ohio State, but that's just because at the time they played more games than the Big Ten. So those two teams were pretty identical, and it just came down to the AP thinking Ohio State was better at the end of the year than Georgia was, so they ranked Ohio State 1 and Georgia 2. So that's the year that Georgia claims the national title, and people say that it's fake. That's not the same as what Alabama's doing. Alabama claims national titles in years where they finished 3rd in the SEC. They claim national titles in years where they lost their bowl game. They claim national titles in years where they lost 3 games total. It's just Alabama is definitely the worst of the worst when it comes to claiming fake national titles. Again, a lot of teams have done it, including Georgia. Today, Auburn. A lot of teams have done it. But there were a lot of years, I guess is what I'm trying to say, where when the season ended, it wasn't crystal clear who the best team was. Look at things now. You got people now can't agree in a lot of cases. What if we didn't have a 12-team playoff last year? Who would have been the national champion? Oregon? Oregon was 12-0 in the regular season. Everybody else had a loss. Who was ranked number 2 at the end? Was it Georgia after winning the SEC championship game? I think it was. It would have been Oregon and Georgia if you would have matched up just 1 and 2 in the AP poll. It would have been Oregon versus Georgia in the national title game. Well, neither one of those teams even won a playoff game. So it is a little subjective when you start looking 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years back in time and going, well, that team finished the season ranked number 1, so they were the best team, right? We don't know that. And that's kind of an accepted thing with college football. Forever, you've had 100-plus teams. They don't all play each other, so it's been very subjective in terms of who the best teams are. So there's no, like, black and white. Like, this was definitely the best team. But pre-playoff era, I mean. Now that we've got a playoff, and I think the 4-team playoff, too, I think it's much more easier to claim not only were you the national champion, but you were the best team in the country, right? You made a playoff, you won the playoff. It's kind of a consensus feeling that you're the best team in the country if you win a 4-team or now a 12-team playoff. Even during the BCS days, there were arguments, of course, that the number 1 and the number 2 team weren't actually the number 1 and the number 2 team. There was the famous 2011 year when LSU and Alabama were given a rematch in the BCS national championship game over some other teams that felt more deserving. Was it 2007 or was it 2008 that sort of chaos college football year where everything fell to shit in the last month of the season. Nobody has any clue who the best team in college football was at the end of that year. It was such a mess. But with a 12-team playoff and a 4-team playoff, it's pretty clear who the best team is. It's whoever wins that playoff, right? They're crowned national champion, and it's kind of a given they were the best team that year. But that wasn't always the case. That's not to excuse these teams for going back in time, because here's how I look at it. If Georgia would have claimed that 1942 national title in January of 1943, when that publication declared Georgia the national champion, that's one thing. But when you're down and out as a program, like Alabama was in the early 80s, like Georgia was in the late 80s, and like Auburn is now, and you reach back decades to start claiming these things, it reeks of desperation. I can admit that as a Georgia fan. 1942 was a weird year. In a lot of ways, World War II was going on, so you had backups. Most of your able-bodied population was off at war, so these football teams in 1942 were kind of a hodgepodge of whatever. The best thing I could relate, I wasn't alive in 1942, obviously. I'm old, but I ain't that old. 1942 and 2020. I don't want to compare COVID to World War II, and that's not what I'm doing. I'm not trying to diminish World War II in any way. What I mean is, a lot of people look at 2020 as sort of not a real college football year. You didn't play your full schedule. You didn't play any non-con games. There was only 5,000 people allowed in the bleachers. Ohio State only played 5 regular season games. It was just a mess of a year. It just was sort of, players opted out. You had some players didn't play at all. You had players had to miss games because you had a positive COVID test. People were living in bubbles. 1942, most 18 to 22-year-old able-bodied males were overseas fighting a war, not back at home, strapped up playing a football game. So it was just kind of an odd year all the way around. But going back in time, 45 years later, Georgia to claim that title for 1942 was an act of desperation in a period of time where Georgia was terrible. They had lost Vince Dooley, at the time the best coach they'd ever had retired and become athletic director. Ray Goff was busy shitting the bed. And they said, well, we'll just go back and claim another national title. That'll make us feel better for a while. Same thing Alabama did after Georgia killed Bear Bryant in January of 1983. Claimed a bunch of fake natties to make themselves feel better at a period of time where they were down and out. And it's the same thing Auburn's doing now. I don't know how many people are going to take these natties for Auburn seriously. I think most people are going to look at Auburn as like a 2-time national championship team, and that's about it. I don't think you're going to see a lot of people referring to Auburn as a 9-time national champion or whatever it is they're pretending to be now. I don't refer to Alabama as an 18-time national champion. I think the absolute best case scenario for Alabama would be a 12-time national champion. Another thing that makes it particularly bad that Alabama does this is that they already have the most national titles of any relevant team today. I mean, you can talk about your Harvards and your Yales and shit from 150 years ago if you want to, and the 27 natties that one of them claims. But in terms of the Power Four today, right, Alabama has way more national titles than anyone else, legitimate national titles. There's no need for them to claim a bunch of fake ones, but they do it anyway. Now, we all know why that is. They're Alabama fans, which means they have absolutely nothing else going for them at all, period, outside of their college football team. Have you ever been to Alabama? I mean, there's a reason there's no pro sports teams there. There's no NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, hockey, none of that. They don't have the economy to support it. You don't have to spend much time in Alabama to figure that out. Driving through there will tell you that right away. So without college football, they wouldn't have anything at all. That's actually why God gave Alabama fans such a good college football team in Alabama, because God didn't give them anything else. No sense, no dental plan. Anyway, I'm starting to get off track. But yeah, congratulations to Auburn on claiming a bunch of fake national titles that nobody is going to take seriously. Appreciate you watching. Have a good morning.